Καλησπέρα, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Πριν λίγο καθόμουν κάτω, τώρα κάθομαι πάνω. Μαθαίνω όλους τους χώρους που βρισκόμαστε εδώ. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ που είστε εδώ για την παρουσίαση της κυρία Cara Hoffman και του βιβλίου της, «Κράχτες», από τις εκδόσεις Gutenberg. Είναι πολύ ιδιαίτερη φυσιογνωμία και συγγραφέας κυρία Hoffman. Το πρώτο που θα σας πω είναι ότι στο μισό χρόνο ζει στη Νέα Υόρκη και τον άλλο μισό στα Εξάρχεια. Είναι της πράγμας, δηλαδή, ένας άνθρωπος που αγαπάει την Ελλάδα. Εγώ μάλιστα μπορώ να σας καταθέσω την προσωπική μου εμπειρία ότι της είχα κάνει πρόσφατα μια συνέντευξη για το μέσο που εργάζομαι. Και η συνάντησή μας έγινε στα Εξάρχεια και μπορώ να σας πω ότι παρότι είμαι άνθρωπος που αγαπώ και εγώ τα Εξάρχεια πάρα πολλά χρόνια, έλεγα λοιπόν ότι είναι ένας άνθρωπος που πραγματικά έχει αποδείξει ότι αγαπάει την Ελλάδα, συγγνώμη για τα κολομπιά, γιατί το μεγάλο μέρος της ζωής της το περνάει εδώ στα Εξάρχεια και το υπόλοιπο στη Νέα Υόρκη. Και σας έλεγα λοιπόν για την προσωπική μου εμπειρία ότι όταν κάναμε συνέντευξη για το μέσο που δούλευα, συναντηθήκαμε στα Εξάρχεια. Εγώ γνωρίζω τα Εξάρχεια πάρα πολλά χρόνια, όμως νομίζω ότι η Κάρα γνωρίζει καλύτερα και από μένα τα Εξάρχεια, όπως και την Αθήνα. Είναι σημαντική συγγραφέας, είναι πραγματικά σημαντική συγγραφέας και σχεδόν όλα τα βιβλία της περιλαμβάνονται στις μεγάλες λίστες των μεγάλων εφημερίδων του εξωτερικού, κυρίως της Αμερικής, ως τα καλύτερα της χρονιάς. Αυτό κάτι δείχνει. Έχει διδάξει στο St. John's, στο Goddard, στο Πανεπιστήμιο της Οξφόρδης. Αρθρογραφεί στους New York Times, στο Paris Review, στο Book Forum, στο Daily Beast, στο Rolling Stone και είναι ιδρυτικό μέλος του Anarchist Review of Books. Είναι μια φυσιογνωμία, ένας άνθρωπος που πέρα από το συγγραφικό ταλέντο, το οποίο είναι προφανές, είναι ένας άνθρωπος που ασχολείται με τα κοινωνικά ζητήματα, με τα πολιτικά ζητήματα. Σας το καταθέτω και αυτό ως προσωπική εμπειρία. Είναι ένας άνθρωπος που χαίρεσε πραγματικά να μιλάς μαζί της για πράγματα πέραν της λογοτεχνίας και προφανώς και για τη λογοτεχνία. Θα μπορούμε να συζητήσουμε και κάποια πράγματα σήμερα, δεν είναι μόνο το βιβλίο. Ούτως ή άλλως το συγκεκριμένο βιβλίο, επαναλαμβάνω, μιλάμε για τους κράχτες, που εκδόθηκε σχετικά πρόσφατα στις εκδόσεις Gutenberg, σε πολύ καλή μετάφραση του Παναγιώτη Κιχαγιά, γιατί έχει και σημασία και αυτό να λέμε για τους μεταφραστές. Γκρόσο μόντο, τώρα θα σας πω λίγο την ιστορία. Γυρνάμε πίσω στο 1988, τέλη δεκαετίας του 80 λοιπόν. Έχουμε ένα ζευγάρι queer, Άγγλων, δύο άντρες, ένας δυτικός, ένας μαύρος, οι οποίοι έρχονται στην Αθήνα, δεν έχουν πολλά λεφτά, ψάχνουν έναν τρόπο κάπως να βγάλουν ένα μεροκάματο για να τρώνε, να πίνουν, και τελικώς γίνονται κράχτες σε ένα ξενοδοχείο στο σταθμό Λαρίσης, όχι την καλύτερη περιοχή της Αθήνας, έτσι κι αλλιώς. Κράχτες σημαίνει ότι τραβάνε τους τουρίστες και τους λένε «Ελάτε, υπάρχει ένα ξενοδοχείο εδώ, για να καταλύσετε». Και από αυτό παίρνουν ένα ποσοστό από τον ιδιοκτήτη του ξενοδοχείου. Γνωρίζουν μια Αμερικανίδα, την Bridie, που αυτό το τρίο, που ενώ ακούγεται ψενικό τρίγωνο, δεν είναι έτσι ακριβώς, πάντως συνδέονται με έναν τρόπο πολύ δυνατό και είναι σαν καταλύτης η Bridie και επηρεάζει τους άλλους δύο, αλλά επηρεάζεται και εκείνη. Μπλέκουν με μια τρομοκρατική ενέργεια, είναι υπόλογοι για μια τρομακτική πράξη που κάνουν και μετά οι ίδιοι ο καθένας ξεχωριστά προσπαθεί να συμφιλιωθεί με αυτό που συνέβη και με τον εαυτό του. Αυτό τώρα είναι ένα γενικό πλαίσιο μέσα στο οποίο δεν είναι προφανώς όλο το βιβλίο. Όσοι δεν το έχετε διαβάσει, σας το προτείνω ανεπιφύλακτα. Είναι ένα βιβλίο το οποίο έχει ένα μετρημένο συγκινησιακό τέμπο, να το πω έτσι. Δεν υπερβάλλει ως το συναίσθημα, αλλά σε κρατάει πάρα πολύ ως προς αυτό. Είναι πολύ καλά μετρημένο στο πώς το έχει γράψει. Για να μην μονολογώ, γιατί δεν έχετε έρθει για μένα και πολύ καλά κάνετε και δεν έρθει για μένα. Ξεκινάω τις ερωτήσεις. Προφανώς θα υπάρχει και χρόνος ελεύθερα να μιλήσετε και εσείς να ρωτήσετε ό,τι θέλετε προς το τέλος της συζήτησης. Λοιπόν, η πρώτη ερώτηση που θα ήθελα να κάνω, ίσως και μπορεί να την κάνουν και άνθρωποι που έχουν διαβάσει το βιβλίο και τους έχει έρθει η ερώτηση στο μυαλό. Είναι η ιστορία της ζωής σου ή είναι κάτι επινοημένο αυτό που διαβάζουμε στους κράχτες?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And I want to say before we get started, thank you to everybody here. Thank you to the Chania Book Festival for inviting me. And thank you, Dionysus. It's wonderful to speak with you again. And thank you for this wonderful translation that makes it possible for me to speak with you. It's a good question, and one that I'm asked very, very often about this book. Is this about my life? Is it the story of my life, or is it a novel? And the answer is that this is a novel, that there are certain aspects that have to do with my own life, and there are certain things that overlap. I worked as a runner when I was young, and I lived in a hotel, sort of in the abandoned top floor of a hotel across from Larissa Station. And I did have really wonderful, formative, interesting relationships with people during that time. But categorically, this is a novel. Many of the characters are based on real people, and the character of Bridie shares traits with me, but I'm a novelist. I'm primarily a novelist, and that's what I do.
Διάβασα κάπου που το έχεις πει, νομίζω μου το έχεις πει και εμένα, ότι εκείνη την περίοδο που ήσουν και εσύ στην Αθήνα, ξεκίνησες από ένα σημείο και μετά να κρατάς σημειώσεις για κάτι που εμπροόδως στη συνέχεια θα γινόταν βιβλίο. Ποιο ήταν το έναυσμα που σε έβαλε στη διαδικασία να κρατάς σημειώσεις για κάτι που δεν ήξερες και εσύ ίδια πώς θα εξελιχθεί?
I'd like to say I didn't know how it was going to develop, but I think that even at 19, I had the arrogance to think that I was going to be writing a book. But I was keeping a journal. I bought a little notebook in the train station, actually, at Larissa's, and I began taking notes on all of the things that I saw and my job, which was very interesting to me and strange, and on the people that I met, all of the many people who essentially were runaways from many different countries, and they all kind of gathered in Athens. At the time, Athens was a very porous country as far as being able to, as far as underground activity is concerned, so smuggling guns or you know, because of its unique position, being sort of European, Middle Eastern, Balkan, like North African, and where it's situated, it was a place that many people could come and get lost, and many people did come and get lost. And for someone who wanted to pay attention and take notes and you know, study and think about these things, it was an ideal place. And it was also, Athens was so incredibly inspirational because Athens was simultaneously gorgeous, like an amazingly beautiful, stunningly beautiful, and stunningly ugly city at the exact same time. And so all of those things, you know, when you're writing a book, you don't want to write something that's just beautiful, or that's, you know, or that's just, I don't know, depressing or something. And Athens had everything, the ancient and modern, and as I said, all the mix of cultures. So it was definitely one of the most inspiring places I had lived up until that time. Yeah.
Μια και το λες αυτό για την Αθήνα, βέβαια είναι υποθετική ερώτηση, αλλά επειδή έχεις γνωρίσει αυτή την εξέλιξη της Αθήνας, θετική αρνητική, θα μας πεις εσύ, από το 1980 έως σήμερα, θα μπορούσε αυτό το βιβλίο να γραφόταν στη σημερινή Αθήνα, ή εκείνη είχε κάτι πιο εφάνταστο, παρά τις αντιθέσεις που είπες και εσύ πιο πριν?
Yeah, I think this is a question that we pose not just for Athens, but I think it's a question we pose for everywhere right now. And that's because, that's because gentrification has, the steamroller of gentrification has rolled over pretty much everywhere. You know, New York City, it's no different. If I was writing about New York City in 1988, it would also be more interesting than New York City now, which is filled with tech bros and weed stores and all the things that, I mean, maybe some people go to New York for those reasons, but not me. And I do think that there were many more interesting things happening at the time culturally. But I say this, I think this should be taken with a grain of salt. I think actually Athens has an incredibly vibrant culture still. And I think that it's still a place where people have principled beliefs, and they live their principles still. And I think actually Athens is unusual. It's an unusual place in the European context, and in all these, certainly in like the context of the Western world, and Greece in general. I mean, I think there are things about Greece that change very, very slowly, and in many ways that's a really good thing. That even the neighborhood where I worked when I was a teenager, the rate at which it is gentrified has been incredibly slow, actually. And the fact that we talk about Exarchia, the fact that Exarchia has, for 50 years now, been a place of counterculture, and only really maybe the past 6-7 years are we seeing this hyper gentrification. And I think that's a testament. I think that's a testament to the. I think that's a testament to the strength of the Greek character and the Athenian character.
Παρότι, όπως είπα και στην αρχή, κινείσαι μεταξύ δύο πόλεων, της Αθήνας και της Νέα Υόρκης, όταν είχα διαβάσει πρώτη φορά την ιστορία σου και μετά όταν σε γνώρισα, το πρώτο πράγμα που μου ήρθε στο μυαλό είναι η διάκριση ανάμεσα στον τουρίστα και τον ταξιδιώτη. Και μου ήρθε στο μυαλό το βιβλίο του Paul Bowles, το Sheltering Sky, όπου η Kit λέει στον άντρα, στον Port, ότι κοίταξε, εμείς δεν είμαστε τουρίστες, είμαστε ταξιδιώτες, γιατί φεύγουμε και δεν ξέρουμε πότε θα γυρίσουμε. Οπότε θα ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω αν αισθανόσουν ταξιδιώτης εκείνα τα χρόνια που ερχόσουν στην Ελλάδα, στην Αθήνα.
When I was young?
Yeah.
I definitely was thinking of myself as a traveler, partly because I bought a one-way ticket, and I kind of backpacked and worked my way down to Greece. I had no intention of ever going back to the United States. I had no intention of stopping traveling. It was the thing that I most wanted to do. I was in, I think I was in Florence, I believe, actually, or either Venice or Florence, and ran into somebody who saw the way I was traveling with a friend, actually, and saw the way I was traveling and we were traveling, and said, "You guys are going to be homeless soon, and you need to get somewhere warm." And that is the point where we went to Athens, and that is the point where we found work. And, we continued to travel and find work in other places after that. But the main thought was, oh, it'll be great. We'll go to Athens and maybe we'll find work in an olive grove or something like that, and like sort of the ideal that you have in your head. And then it turns out differently, and then you have a different adventure. But I had no intention of coming back to the United States. And I still, in many ways, feel like it was a mistake that I ever did go back to the United States, which, of course, is why I'm back here now and why I live in Greece now. Yeah.
Ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω, ποια ήταν η υποδοχή του βιβλίου στις ΗΠΑ, στη χώρα σου? Με ποια έννοια το λέω? Ότι το καταλαβαίνω, υπάρχει πάντα μια στερεοτυπική αντίληψη και εικόνα που έχουν οι ξένοι για την Αθήνα, για την Ελλάδα, τσολιαδάκια, Ακρόπολη. Στο δικό σου βιβλίο όμως υπάρχει ένα πολύ έντονο ανθρώπινο στοιχείο που ξεδιαλύνει όλα αυτά τα κλισέ. Επομένως, θα ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω πώς το υποδέχτηκαν αυτό το βιβλίο.
Well, it's a very interesting question. This book is, so I wrote this book. This was the first, Running is the first book I wrote. And I published 3 other books, actually more, because I wrote some books under a pseudonym. So I published several other books before Running came out. When I first had an agent, when I was first trying to shop the book, I was, I think, pretty roundly met with disbelief about it, that this is some sort of complete work of fantasy, and I think there was a great deal of skepticism. I had an agent early on who wanted changes to the book, which were, in retrospect, extremely ridiculous. Like both, feminizing the main character more was, one of the things. Can't we see them do something like nice, like go out to dinner, or things like this? Like, we know Greece. Can't we see a little more of, like, where are the cycladic blue and white? Where is the So I would say initially it was received in that way. I published all these other books, and like they say in publishing, well, once you get a few books under your belt, then you'll be able to do whatever you want. And it kind of turned out to be true, because this is, I don't want to say the only book, but this book is much more important to me than the other work that I created, and much more, it's closer to my heart, it's closer philosophically to how I think and feel, and once those other books came out, I was able to publish Running, and then it was received really well. I mean, when it came out, literally, I think something like 23 years after I had been a runner, and 20 years after I had first been, I had that agent tell me that it wasn't right. It was well received. There was a full page in the New York Times book review, and it was interesting to talk to people about. I would say this: Americans have such a view of Greece, either only as classical antiquity or only as a place to have a vacation. And so I think nobody conceives of Greece as a place where regular people live. I also think one of the horrible things about the people's ignorance about Greek history and Greek culture, and certainly modern Greek culture, is that nobody has, in the United States anyway, or very few people, have an understanding of the political history, which is so incredibly important and filled with truly inspirational stories of resistance. And, so I think there are certain subcultures in the U.S. who take a great deal of inspiration for that. Like, the anarchist movement in the U.S. is deeply influenced by the anarchist movement in Greece, and certain things like that. But the average reader, not a clue, not a, and that, I mean, I understand that's like a real, I think that's a burden for Greek writers. I think it's, to me, I'm in a position of relative privilege because I can bring this story that maybe shows something different. But I think I think a Greek writer who's trying to publish in English is always caught in that snare where they want the stereotype and they want to see the, you know, the beautiful things. And to me, that's really sad, because the culture here is it's deep and it's so intellectual and it's so political. Yeah.
Παρότι δεν το είχα ως ερώτηση, τώρα με αυτό που έλεγες μου γεννήθηκε. Και εμείς εδώ οι Έλληνες συγγραφείς προσπαθούμε να βρούμε αυτό που λέμε το μεγάλο θέμα που να μπορέσει να κρατήσει τον κόσμο που διαβάζει. Νομίζω ότι αυτό ισχύει και στην Αμερική, το μεγάλο μυθιστόρημα που συζητάμε δεκαετίες. Εσύ που ζεις και στην Αθήνα, πιστεύεις ότι η σημερινή Αθήνα μπορεί να προσφέρει υλικό, ακόμα και σε σένα, για να έπιανες το σφιγμό αφού που λέμε του μεγάλου θέματος και να έφτιαχνες κάτι, ένα μυθιστόρημα?
Oh, do you mean for a Greek writer or an American writer?
As an American writer.
Oh, I mean, I think yes, Athens. I mean, I absolutely. I think Athens is an inspirational place. I mean, I'm writing a nonfiction book right now about Athens, and you know, I've been living in Athens for quite a while now, and I still see it as inspirational, and I still see many of the ways that people are living their lives there as actually models of, principled action and, you know, principled discourse. And I also think, I think another thing that's very interesting about Greek culture is some of the things that, and again, this is like one of those moments of contradiction. Some of the things that make the culture so solid, right, are things like the family, right? I mean, like thinking about the crisis and thinking about how a country can move through something that's that deeply debilitating. And not only, but in many ways, it happens because the family is such a strong structure here. So people are really taking care of each other. You also have the family as being this incredibly oppressive structure. Yeah. Like incredibly oppressive, and people writing and talking and thinking about it like this is really, difficult. So I think, again, it's all these contradictions that make Athens like a place that, that is, it's deeply worthy of examination and filled with characters and themes and thoughts that are just completely rife for writing. Yeah.
Για να επιστρέψουμε στο βιβλίο, και με ευκαιρία τη σημερινή μας συνάντηση, το ξανακοίταξα άλλη μια φορά, στην δεύτερη δηλαδή ανάγνωση, και επιμένω ότι η καρδιά του βιβλίου, εκεί που χτυπάει δηλαδή η καρδιά, είναι η αγάπη. Η αγάπη προς την πόλη, η αγάπη των ανθρώπων των χαμένων ψυχών, να το πω έτσι, που προσπαθούν να βρεθούν και δεν τα καταφέρνουν ή το κάνουν με λάθος τρόπο. Έχω λάθος, αν είναι το παραδέχομαι. Πες μου εσύ όμως πώς το σκέφτηκες όταν το έγραφες.
No, you're not wrong. No, I mean, running is primarily a love story, right? I mean, running is like, as if anybody hasn't been able to guess already, like running is a love story to the city of Athens. I mean, it is sort of all-encompassing embrace of the beauty and the ugliness of that place. And it's also a love story to, it's a love story about three people, right? I mean, it's essentially a love triangle. The bride comes in and is accepted and kind of embraced and becomes family with this, queer couple. And they have a tumultuous but very, very important, accepting, loving life. And it's also, the book is also like about, I think it's humanizing people who have very little. It's about poor people, really. I mean, I think one of the things that people also get used to with writing that takes place in Greece or that's set here is the idea of the colonial novel, where rich people come and they enjoy the natives that are here, and they have a vacation and they have an exotic experience in some manner. But running is actually about people who are completely down and out. I mean, it's about people who are essentially runaways, and they're doing much worse than the Greek people who they encounter. And they are able to find a home here, and they're able to create their own kind of chosen family and their own tribe. And that, I think, is the crux of the love story. But no, of course, I mean, it's about that kind of love. It's also about kind of an intellectual, an imaginative love, like the power of these people imagining a completely different world that they're going to live in, and a complete rejection of the dominant culture that says that, you know, it's not okay to be queer, it's not okay to be a woman, it's not okay to be different, it's not okay to think differently. It's you know, all the various authorities and that keep people down, including, right, like the cops in our head, right? You know, it's the phrase, like, you have to kill the cop in your head in order to really be free. And I think running is definitely a story about killing the cop in your head, embracing like love of everyone.
Μπορεί να ακουστεί τεχνική η ερώτηση, δεν είναι όμως. Αφορά και τους αναγνώστες αυτό το πράγμα. Εσύ είσαι ένας άνθρωπος που βίωσες κάτι αντίστοιχο. Μας είπες βέβαια στην αρχή ότι είναι μυθοπλασία όλο αυτό, δεν είναι αυτοβιογραφία. Ωστόσο, όταν το γράφεις και έχεις αντίστοιχες παραπλήσιες εμπειρίες, πώς καταφέρνεις να μην σε καταπιεί το συναίσθημα, αλλά να διατηρείς? Γιατί εγώ μίλησα στην αρχή ότι αυτό το βιβλίο έχει μια πηγή που βγάζει συναίσθημα, αλλά δεν σε πνίγει το συναίσθημα. Εσύ όταν το έγραφες, πώς μπορούσες να είσαι απ' έξω από όλο αυτό, για να μην σε καταπιεί?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I did manage to not be absorbed by the emotion of it. I think part of it is, I mean, when I wrote Running, when I first started writing Running, I had gone back to the United States, and I had all these notes, and I had sort of chapters that I had written in this notebook. And my first idea for writing the book was that I would get this thing published, and then all of my friends who I had lost touch with, because when we were traveling then, you know, there was no internet, and, you know, there were no phones, there's no way to continue to be connected to anyone. And I actually had this crazy idea that I would get this book published, and that my friends would see it somewhere in a bookstore or like in a train station or wherever you buy books, right? And they would see my name, and they would know that I made it home to the United States, and they would track me down, and we would find each other again. And it was this idea that I would somehow reconnect to these people who were some of the most important people in my life. That thought kind of kept me going. I also wrote the book, I think, in part because I was very isolated when I went back to the United States. I went back and I had a baby, and I was writing the book while he was, you know, asleep most of the time. We had very little money, and we were, you know, we were on welfare, and, you know, the whole kind of thing. And I was writing this book as a way to keep living in this world that made me who I am. And I think the other way I wasn't completely swallowed by emotion by it is because I had somebody who actually is here now visiting, who's one of my best and closest friends. This is where I really will get emotional, who was a runner. and we were runners together, and so I had him to talk to, so I wasn't completely alone. I wasn't completely like, oh my God, you know, am I totally crazy? This really happened, right? Like, we are really living this life now. And so it was definitely like the support of, you know, his support and love also helped me not be consumed by it. I will say one of the bigger questions for me, and I think is a question for all writers, is it actually ethical to write about people, real people? And when I was first writing it, that was the thing that I think partly destroyed me. Like the idea that I was going to write about some of the most, maybe some of the saddest things that had happened to some of my friends or me. And what does that mean that we as writers take and take and take and change and retool and create? Like, what does that mean? And when I was 20, right, when I was back home and I was writing this, that was the thing that would mess me up sometimes. And I would think, oh, I'm just writing this for myself so I can live in this world. No, I have to write it to find my friends. No, am I exploiting my friends? So those were the emotions that were taking me. Very good question, thank you.
Λοιπόν, συνεχίζω αυτό που λες. Ίσως γι' αυτό και οι κανονικοί άνθρωποι θεωρούν τους συγγραφείς ότι είναι και λίγο περίεργα όντα. Είμαστε, έτσι κι αλλιώς. Θα ήθελα να σε ρωτήσω όμως, τι κάνει έναν συγγραφέα χαρούμενο, τελικά? Υπάρχει κάτι που εσένα τι σε κάνει χαρούμενη?
I mean, I think what makes me happy is the same thing that makes everybody happy. Although I do admit that writers we are not normal. We're just not.
To tell the truth.
Yeah, to tell the truth. No, we're not. When I was first dating my partner, sometimes we would be riding the subway together, and I would be looking at people, just really studying them. I don't know, somebody wearing something strange. New York City subways are filled with the most amazing people in the world, actually, and we had to ride the subway a lot. And he would always say, are you stealing someone's soul now? You know, because I would be watching. What makes me happy? I mean, I don't think that the things that make me happy as a writer are different than the things that make me happy as a person. But I do think that there's something that all artists experience, no matter what it is they're doing, and that is being in a state of flow. And that means just the point where you're feeling like the work is coming from somewhere else. Like you don't feel like you're writing it. Like the work just feels like it's entering your head and like coming out through your hands. That's a good day as like a writer. But as a person, I don't know if that's a good day. As a person, like a good day is like being in Hanya and like lying on the beach, right? Yeah.
Θα κάνω άλλη μία ερώτηση και οπότε αν θέλετε υπάρχει και χρόνος για εσάς να ρωτήσετε. Αν όχι θα συνεχίσω εγώ, αλλά ελπίζω να έχετε ερωτήσεις. Θέλω να πω κάτι. Είπα και στην αρχή ότι είσαι ένας άνθρωπος που πραγματικά το δείχνεις ότι αγαπάς την Ελλάδα. Στην συνέντευξη που είχαμε κάνει μαζί, και θέλω να το πω αυτό, μου είχες πει ότι μία από τις πιο σημαντικές στιγμές της καριέρας σου είναι ότι το βιβλίο αυτό εκδόθηκε στα ελληνικά. Που είναι πολύ συγκινητικό για έναν άνθρωπο ο οποίος είναι Αμερικανίδα και είναι μια επιτυχημένη συγγραφέα στη χώρα της. Θα ήθελα να... Δεν ξέρω αν είναι ερώτηση ακριβώς ή όχι, αλλά θα ήθελα να μου πεις για αυτή την ελληνική έκδοση.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. The pinnacle, high point of my career is seeing this book come out in Greek, is being able to hold the book, was being able to, you know, go meet my Greek publisher, was being able to know that this book was in bookstores in Greece. It was a complete full circle. Athens is a place where I became myself. Like it's literally the place where I learned, I think, to be a human being. And it's also where I learned to be a writer. It's actually the first large city I ever lived in. I lived in New York City, in the States for a long time, but I grew up in a very, very tiny town, like a small Rust Belt town that's near a woods, like a big forest, and it's just like a complete vast snowy landscape. Athens was the place that taught me everything. Athens gave me my voice as a writer, and the spirit of the place is something that means so much to me as a person. And when this book came out here, I was elated. I couldn't believe it. I felt like, those moments where you're like, okay, now I'm done. Like, I did it. Like, it happened. Like, here it is, and now it can come out, and now people can read it. And weirdly, when your interview and the LIFO profile and those things came out, people who were runners did get in touch with me. So the thing that I wanted when I was 20 happened for me. Like, they contacted me and they sent me pictures of like the time, yes. Yeah. And so all of that happened. But it's, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm incredibly grateful to all the people who helped make that happen, including you. And I'm incredibly grateful to the culture and all the richness of the culture that gave me the life that I have. And I don't mean like materially gave me the life I have. I mean like gave me like a way of thinking, gave me like sort of a philosophy to live by. And I guess that's all I have to say about it.
Θέλετε να ρωτήσετε? Δεν ξέρω.
Oh, I think she needs to use the microphone. Sorry.
Πάρτε καλύτερα το μικρόφωνο.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It's about the use of language. I'm wondering what makes a writer be not normal and what makes a not-writer be normal. The definition, how do you define why I am not normal or why?
Yeah, you know what, maybe none of you are normal either.
Nobody's normal.
Language, not definitions, because it's a tricky thing what is normal and what is not normal.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We have to be careful when we use these definitions or these concepts without defining what makes you normal or not normal.
You're right.
Είπα normal.
Yeah, normal, exactly. No, you're right. Good point. Good point. Point taken. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Hi.
Hello again.
Hello.
All right, I'm going to bug you again about the whole escape and freedom thing in the book.
About
the whole idea of like multiple types of escape, multiple types of freedom. So right at the beginning of the book, right, when Brady meets Milo, like he's just at Athens, and then Milo's immediately like, no, the thing is to get out of Athens, to go to the islands. But then like, not even a page later, it's like looking at like the runners kind of introducing everybody else to the idea that there's like this perfect beach or perfect town down the road. It's like none of that is true. And then his first conversation with Jasper shows him this like map of the world. It's like the problem is there is no escape. And then even as runners, like they keep leaving the city, they keep coming back into it. Brian leaves Athens, comes back to find her friends. But there's this whole tension of like people trying to kind of get away from stuff and coming back to it.
Yeah.
But I think it also gets complicated because when we meet Milo later on, he's got a job in New York City, he's got money, he's got a place to live, everything's working out for him. It's like he's still living as a runner. And he's looking at all the kind of like brotherly affluent people he's working with. And he's saying like, well, these people are for me.
Yeah.
Because they're constantly worried about their stuff. They're scared of losing their stuff. They're scared of being disrespected. And like he actually thinks to himself, they don't have the kind of freedom that we had when we had nothing.
Right.
So I kind of want you to talk a bit about this idea of like, is it a kind of positive sense of freedom, a negative sense of freedom?
Yeah.
Like what's the kind of philosophical kind of structure behind this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's an excellent question. I think running is a really classic and example of negative freedom, right? I think everything that you're pointing out about the book is true. That people are continuously leaving and not able to leave enough, and this is definitely like repeated throughout the book. Even Milo, who was escaped and who was going towards something that one would think is a complete trajectory of success, right? He gets like a book published, he gets like an appointment at a great university, and he's still like, fuck this. This isn't working. And I think this, right, is the existential state that we all find ourselves in, right? There is no leaving. There is no really getting out. You can be a runner and you can go forever. You can circle the world forever and there's no escape. And even when you die, there's no escape, right? And there's no drop of water on this earth that wasn't there, right? So you're just continuously in it. And I think that idea of this great desire to somehow reach escape velocity is at the heart of it. How do we do that? And I think that, running, the idea is that there's two ways that you reach escape velocity, right? And one is art and one is love. And they're in these like tiny moments, right? They're these glimpses of it. And all of us experience this, right? There's the transcendence of art and there's the transcendence of love. And those are the things that like allow us to make it out. So thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Ήθελα να ρωτήσω ποιοι είναι οι αγαπημένοι σας συγγραφείς, ποιοι σας έχουν επηρεάσει και αν έχετε διαβάσει κάποιους Έλληνες.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the Greek author that I love the most is Zorana Ziteli. I don't know. You guys know her work. Amazing. Amazing. And my favorite authors are Louis Ferdinand Céline, who wrote Journey to the End of the Night and Death on the Installment Plan, the French author. David Wojnarowicz, who wrote a book called Close to the Knives, which I think is just an absolutely perfect novel. I don't think Close to the Knives is translated into Greek, but it certainly should be. It's an incredible, important work. And if you can find it in English or find Wojnarowicz was also an artist, and I think if you can find his work, that would be really great. Most recently, I will have to say that my favorite book in Greek is Victoria's Dust by Kostas Kaltsas, which I think is, I know, I'm sorry, Kostas, but it's truly, truly an amazing book. And he has an event also, I think, tonight. So I read a lot about Greek history, and I had read a lot about the Civil War and Decembriana and all these things. And I had only really understood these things as like history. I had never felt them. I had never viscerally felt what was going on. And when I read Kostas's book, it was tremendous. The feeling, the powerful feeling of being so empathetically tied to the people who experienced these things, to people who experienced starvation, and to people who lived through, who went to the mountains and became fighters, and people who lived through these things. It's I think it's a really powerful, really important book. I mean, other Greek writers, I think I probably will just, everybody would know, Seferis, etc. I wish so much that we had more modern Greek writers translated into English, because I think that's another, it's part of what I was talking about before, about this bias where Americans and the English-speaking world wants to see Greece as a vacation paradise, and they don't really want to, A, accept their role in harming the culture, and B, they want a happy escape. And there's so much good Greek literature, I think, that should be translated. Maria Xylouri also, I think, is, if you've read any of Maria Xylouri's great short stories and like really wonderful novel, she's like an amazing writer. So I would say those are the Greek writers I most read. Thank you for your question. Yeah. Anybody else?
Έχουμε λίγο χρόνο ακόμα. Αν έχετε κάποια ερώτηση.
I'm sorry?
Are you planning to learn Greek?
Nah. It's Catalaveno, λίγο, αλλά I don't even know how to say embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to speak because I do so badly. But I am planning to learn it, and my partner is doing better at learning Greek right now. I keep saying, you know, when I'm past this deadline, when I hand this book in, and then I'll do an immersion class. But yes, yeah, no, I recognize my failure there. It is my plan. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Who do you think will like your book more, the American people or Greek?
It's a good question. There's a certain kind of American person who really likes the book. And I don't want to use the word normal or not normal, but the certain kind of American person who likes the book tends to like really transgressive literature. But the Greek people who like the book, I think it's a much broader population. So the people who read running and who were fans of running, or who, you know, came to my events and talked to me about it, they were more interested in maybe darker literature. But I think there's Greece has a really good like reader culture. People are really interested in all kinds of things here. So in Greece, people like my friends' 80-year-old mothers kind of things liked the book and understood it more as a novel, and I think they could flow with it better. So in general, I think maybe the general Greek population likes it better. I do want to add one more person to the who do I read and who do I think is important, now that I'm thinking about it, is Marguerite Duras, who is, I think, extremely influential to my work and really important to me. And I also think when we're thinking about transgressive, that's another, Duras, I think, is accepted in Europe in a different way than she is or was in the United States, where her work was always seen as like transgressive or scandalous or something. So, yeah, thank you for your question. Yeah.
Ίσως μια τελευταία ερώτηση. Είμαστε τώρα 5. Σας καλύψαμε, νομίζω.
One. Yeah.
Ωραία. Εγώ θέλω να ευχαριστήσω την Κάρα για την παρουσία της και την πάντα που κάναμε. Θα εξακολουθήσω να είμαι η ζωντανή της διαφήμιση. Θεωρώ ότι είναι πραγματικά... Οφείλω να είμαι ειλικρινής, δεν είχα διαβάσει κάτι άλλο δικό πριν μεταφραστεί στα ελληνικά. Νομίζω ότι είναι καλή ευκαιρία να αρχίσουμε να ψάχνουμε και τα υπόλοιπα βιβλία της, ενδεχόμενα και εκδόσεις Gutenberg, θα ενδιαφερθούν ακόμα περισσότερο. Είναι μια συγγραφέα που πραγματικά αξίζει. Είναι πολύ δυνατή φωνή και δεν της βάζω παράσημα που δεν τα αξίζει. Νομίζω χρειαζόμαστε τέτοιες φωνές και κυρίως γυναικείες φωνές που αυτό κι αν είναι αίτημα της εποχής. Νομίζω, μια τελευταία ερώτηση. Είναι ένα αίτημα της εποχής να έχουμε εδραίες, καλές γυναικείες φωνές?
I think so. I think it's extremely important. I think it's especially important in Greek, both in Greek literature and translation, and in Greek literature in general. I will say I'm very happy to have this conversation with you, and I'm really happy to have all of the wonderful interviews and promotion and excitement around the book. But it is very interesting that no one really put me in conversation ever with like another, like a woman author. Or, I mean, it didn't happen here in Greece. And it could be entirely circumstantial, but it probably is circumstantial. But it also is, I do think that both here and in the U.S., there still is a real bias against what you're saying about like the strong female voice. Yeah. There's always an expectation to enact the stereotype, and so I completely agree with you. Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, for saying that.
Με τα στερεότυπα. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Να είστε καλά.
Thanks. Thank you.